People think Cleopatra was powerful because she was beautiful. That's wrong. Beauty didn't save her kingdom. Power almost did. In this video, you'll discover how Cleopatra used intelligence, psychology, and strategy to control empires without commanding legions. You'll see how real power works when you don't own the strongest army, and how influence can be stronger than force. But there's one decision she made that changed the fate of her entire world. A single move that looked smart and destroyed everything she was trying to protect. Stay until the end to find out what that move was and why the strongest minds still debate if it was genius or fatal.
You hear the name Cleopatra, and what comes to mind? Probably legendary beauty, right? Epic romance, the tragic queen of Egypt. But what if I told you that for over 2,000 years, that entire image has been shaped almost completely by her enemies? Okay, let's dive into this, because the story we think we know, it's really only half the truth. Yeah, for centuries, she's been painted as this master seductress. A woman who used love and romance to get everything she wanted. But the historical reality? Oh, it's so much more compelling. We're talking about a brilliant political strategist, someone forged in a world of constant betrayal, who used alliances to fight for her kingdom's very survival. So that's the big question, isn't it? Who was the real Cleopatra? Well, to answer that, we have to peel back all these layers of Roman propaganda and, Hollywood fantasy to find the scholar, the diplomat, and the last true pharaoh of Egypt. See, to understand the queen, you first have to understand the world that made her. And trust me, it wasn't a world of romance novels. It was a brutal, intellectual, and incredibly dangerous place that demanded absolute brilliance just to stay alive.
So Cleopatra was born into what's known as the Ptolemaic dynasty. Now, here's the wild part. Despite ruling Egypt for almost 300 years, the Ptolemies were not Egyptian at all. They were Macedonian Greeks, descended from one of Alexander the Great's top generals. And their court in Alexandria? Well, it was this dazzling hub of learning, home to the greatest library in the world, but it was also completely poisoned by paranoia. We're talking brothers marrying sisters, and political assassination was just, another Tuesday. And that Greek heritage brings us right into a very modern debate about her ethnicity. While we know for sure her father's family line was Macedonian Greek, the identity of her mother and grandmother isn't definitively recorded. And that's led some to speculate that she may have had African ancestry. Ultimately, the historical sources that we do have all point to a Ptolemaic Greek lineage. But, and this is so important to remember, she was ruling over a cosmopolitan Egypt, a truly multiracial society at the crossroads of Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. And this right here perfectly illustrates what made her so different. Cleopatra did something none of her ancestors had ever bothered to do. She actually learned to speak Egyptian. In fact, ancient writers claim she could speak at least 9 languages fluently. Now, this wasn't just some party trick. This was a revolutionary political move that connected her directly to the people she ruled in a way her family never had. Growing up in Alexandria, literally the intellectual capital of the ancient world, she received a world-class education. She studied politics, rhetoric, philosophy, even medicine. She wasn't just some royal heir waiting in the wings. She was a true intellectual, trained not just to reign, but to rule. And that intellect is the absolute key to understanding her famous relationships. Look, they weren't just love affairs. They were masterstrokes of political strategy, and they were essential for the survival of an Egypt caught in the ever-growing shadow of Rome. Just think about that legendary story of her introduction to Julius Caesar. Smuggled past her brother's guards, rolled up in a carpet. She didn't present herself as some beggar or a victim. No way. She arrived as a spectacle. It was a daring, unforgettable move. This wasn't seduction. It was brilliant political theater, designed to show Caesar that she was the bold, rightful ruler he should be dealing with. Their alliance was totally pragmatic, a perfect example of political synergy. Both of these leaders had something the other one desperately needed. Caesar, the most powerful man in the world, needed Egypt's insane wealth to pay off his debts, and he needed stability there to secure the grain supply. Cleopatra, who'd been kicked out by her own brother, needed a powerful Roman ally to get her throne back. See? This wasn't romance. It was a mutually beneficial transaction between two of the sharpest political minds of their time. Now, her partnership with Mark Antony was even more ambitious. This wasn't just about saving Egypt anymore, it was about building a whole new center of power in the East. Together, they imagined an empire that could stand as an equal to Rome, a dream that put them on a direct collision course with Caesar's heir, Octavian. So, how did this incredible vision just crumble? Well, it wasn't just on the battlefield. Cleopatra was defeated in a ruthless information war, a war of words, of propaganda, waged by Octavian back in Rome. Octavian and his allies went to work painting Cleopatra as this corrupting foreign influence. The famous Roman writer Cicero even called her the Egyptian whore, an insult designed to strip away her legitimacy and frame her not as a political rival, but as an immoral temptress. And what's so skillful here is how Octavian's propaganda actually worked. He framed Mark Antony, this powerful Roman general, not as a willing political partner, but as a weak man who was bewitched by a foreign sorceress. It was a narrative that masterfully shifted all the blame from Antony onto Cleopatra. And this was Octavian's masterstroke. He didn't declare war on his Roman rival Antony. He declared war on Cleopatra. By doing this, he completely transformed what was basically another Roman civil war into a patriotic war to defend Rome from a dangerous foreign queen. He united the Roman people against an enemy he had literally invented. So the propaganda war led to a real one. The huge naval battle of Actium in 31 BC was just a crushing defeat for their forces. And within a year, Octavian's armies were at the gates of Alexandria, and both Antony and Cleopatra would be dead. But Cleopatra's story doesn't just end in simple tragedy. Her final moments were not the desperate act of a heartbroken lover. No, they were the last calculated move of a queen who was absolutely determined to control her own destiny. The core of her entire life, her whole struggle, was for this one idea: sovereignty, the supreme authority to rule her kingdom. And Octavian planned to take that from her by parading her through the streets of Rome in chains as his ultimate trophy. So what does she do? She makes her final choice, and it's this incredibly deliberate series of actions. First, she buries Antony with all the honors befitting a ruler. Then she prepares herself, bathing and dressing in her full royal regalia. And finally, she chooses her own death. This was not a surrender. By dying as a queen in Egypt, she made one final defiant statement. She denied Octavian his victory parade and robbed him of the ultimate symbol of his conquest. In her very last act, she seized control of her own story. Cleopatra lost her kingdom, yeah, but she left behind a legacy so powerful that her enemies had to completely rewrite it just to diminish her. Which leaves us with a final thought, right? If the victors are the ones who get to write history, how many other stories have been twisted? And how many other great strategists have been misremembered as just seductresses?
Power grows when it is shared. If this story moved you, show your support with a like and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. Every great story lives through questions. If something surprised you, or if you want to explore more, leave your questions in the comments.